Welcome to Module 2, Project Budgeting and Analyzer. Today we'll review entry of project budgets as well as processes, setups, and inquiry and reporting related to these modules. Entry happens in a couple places. We can enter budgets in both budget maintenance and we can do a budget schedule. We also have the ability to do a budget revision, and we also will review the EAC maintenance, which is another location where we can enter budgets. Project budget and maintenance with budget schedules. The first budget maintenance screen is called budget maintenance. And this is the budget screen where all the budgets flow to. So rather, if you're using budget revision or just budget maintenance, this is the collective place where you will see and be able to review your budgets for your projects. The main thing we want to look at in this screen is that the budget is by project and task and account category. We also have the ability to do a budget schedule. I'm going to show you the product at this point so we can see how this works. So if I go to budget schedule, I'll pull my budget up and we'll look at the budget as well as the details of a budget. So here's my project or my job. And then my activity is where the budget schedule is located. And I can see the budget here. Now we see both the original budget, so you'll see we have a couple kinds of budgets related to projects. This is the project to date budget or the overall budget for the project. And we have the budget by the account category or the cost code. Now we also have this budget in two forms. We have it in the original budget and we have it in what's called the EAC budget. And the EAC budget means estimate and completion, or our revised budget. So I'm not very familiar with this term, so we're going to change this to be revised budget because that's a little easier for me to follow. So let's go back and we can change the caption similar to what we have done with our previous caption changes. So we're going to go to Project Controller Setup, and let's go and change our caption, and I want that to say, instead of EAC, I want it to say Revised Budget. Now we also have another type of budget called FAC, or Forecast at Completion. Instead of having it say Forecast or FAC, I'm going to say Forecast instead. So now I've changed two captions. Now if I reopen my budget maintenance screen, we'll see the changes in the captions. So looking back at my screen, we'll see it now says revised budgets, revised units, and revised amount because my caption has changed. Now once I'm in this screen, you'll see that I have it by account category to the left-hand side. And when I entered my original budget, I actually did that in project maintenance, if you recall. So I'm going to open project maintenance, and we'll see we can also enter our original budget as we're setting up the project in project maintenance. So on the budget tab, the original budget was put into this screen. And then when that was saved, it came over here and it updated this screen so I can see my budgets here. If I wanted to, I could bypass the project maintenance screen and come directly into this screen and enter it if I want to. Either place is fine. The thing you have to remember is if you make changes to this budget, we want to make any revisions within this budget maintenance screen rather than going back to the project maintenance screen. This is only intended to enter the original budget, and then all revisions or edits need to either be made here or the next screen that I'll show you. The original budget then can be broken down into what we call time-phased or a budget schedule. So if I click on this secondary budget or button, you will see that now I have buckets where I can enter annual budgets. So the first screen is my project budget because most of the time projects will cross years. So this is my project since inception budget, but the secondary original budget schedule will allow me to enter a monthly budget for any given year or multiple years. I have the same ability on the revised schedule down here, or EAC if you're looking at a standard install, and we would have the ability to enter our revised budget by month as well. This would give us reporting where we can compare our actuals to budget per month if we want to, and we also have the ability to compare the project to date actuals compared to the budgets that we've had since inception. So this is the place where the budget information is collected and stored. Now also when I set up my project, I have a choice. If I have both the project budgeting module and just budget maintenance, I have the ability to choose where do I want to enter my budget. So this says direct budget, direct or revision budget. So direct budgeting down or choice here means that I would have the ability to enter it directly into budget maintenance. Now the next screen we'll look at is called budget revision maintenance. And that's a little different, and it allows me to track more information to my budgets. So if I go to project budgeting and I go to budget revision maintenance, this screen allows me to do exactly what that says, track revisions. So now I can have a history of what my budget is, because if I go to this screen in budget maintenance, and let's say I have a change order to my project, and now my revenue is going to go up. Well, if I'm only using direct budgeting, then I would come in here and I would just type over the amount, and I wouldn't know that prior to typing over it that it's $62,500 and now it's $63,000. So it's nicer to be able to have a history of what that budget was. And in order to do that, we can use the budget revision maintenance. So if I come to budget revision maintenance, you'll see for this project I have two revisions. I have the initial budget, and that initial budget has information by project and task and account category, just like we saw. So I have this project, and here's the task that this is for, and these are the account categories for this task. Now if I go to another task, then I can see the budget entries for that specific task. So the screen is a little difficult to get used to, but once you're familiar with it, then you know how to navigate it a little bit more. So I can choose each task and see the budget that was entered for that task. Now let's go to revision number 1 and look at that one. And this is a revision to that budget. Now I'm going to create a new one here just so we can. So I'm going to create a new revision. I'm going to choose that same project, and I'm going to enter revision number 2. And you'll notice it has a preparer and also an approver. And I can associate it or choose a task. So I'm going to choose task travel. Now the interesting thing that we can do in the screen is we can choose how we want this budget revision to impact our budget. So we have the choice of net change, which literally if I put $1,000 on this line for revenue, then at the time this budget revision is posted, it's going to add $1,000 to whatever budget already exists for this task and this account category called revenue. So we'll add or change it by the net change amount that's in the screen. I could also put a negative in here and would reduce the budget if I wanted to. Now if I choose complete replacement, then what will happen is that, let's say I had 5 lines on the first budget and I had revenue, labor, and materials, let's say, on my budget already. If I do complete replacement and I only replace it with one line that says revenue, it would remove the revenue, labor, materials budget that already exists and replace it with just one line that's for revenue. Also, if I choose new amounts, so the complete replacement is good if you entered a budget incorrectly and then you want to completely replace what you already entered and put it back with a new set of budgets. New amounts is literally the idea where I can just replace this one line. So if I had revenue, labor, and materials on my budget originally, and I entered a budget for new amounts and only had revenue in here, it would leave the labor and materials on my original budget that I had set up, and it would replace just the revenue line. It wouldn't add to it. It would replace the revenue line with this $1,000. So you have a lot of choices on how you are going to impact your budget. And when this budget's released, it will go back and it will update the values in this budget. So if I do complete replacement, whatever's on my budget revision will wipe out everything that's here and put exactly what I have on my budget revision. If I use net change, it will just take the amount on my budget revision and it'll update the specific line that I'm entering it for, and it'll update it with the net difference. Okay, the other thing we can do is we can choose what part of the budget will be updated. So we have quite a few choices here. I can do revised only, and if I choose revised only, which is the most common, is that it will, when it's posted, it will come over and it will only update the revised amount column and the revised units if you put in units. So this is the typical choice we would make if we have a change order and we want to add or subtract to the existing budget that we have. If you're putting in a new budget directly into this screen rather than going into project maintenance, then we can choose original and revised. So when we choose original and revised, everything that's on this budget revision updates all these columns. So it'll update the original budget, the original units, the revised units, and the revised amount. Then we also have one that would update the forecast too. So we can update the original, the revised, and the forecast. The forecast is only visible in Project Analyzer. Now let's talk about what the difference between original budget, revised, and forecast. So I already mentioned that if we look at the idea of budgets, we would normally have our signed statement of work would be our original budget. And that budget is in stone usually, and we want to track what that original budget was. But now we've gotten more work from the customer, and now we have a change order. So the change order is usually handled under the EAC, or estimate at completion. And that usually, we want to keep our original budget what it was, and then the revised budget, or the EAC, is what we typically would update. But then we always know that there's probably where we're going to come in at, and that may not match either the original or the revised. So we want to be able to track a forecast at completion as well. So what our project managers think it's really going to cost, or what the type of cost we'll have. So that's the reason for the third budget. We can use that for forecasting from our project managers. Okay, once a project budget is finished, we would change it to completed. And then the workflow related to a completed budget is that we can now approve that budget. So let's go back to the PowerPoint and let's just look at a couple reinforcement slides here. So we have our budget maintenance, and typically we would use one or the other. Most companies, if they don't own the project budgeting module, then all of their budgets are handled through budget maintenance. If they want that additional budget revisions, then they would go ahead and get the project budgeting module. We can do the budget schedule here, budget revisions. We can have a history of our revisions, and we can see the various budget types that we can choose more than one budget type. And so it's more of a global update when we process that. It also has workflow related to it where we can do an approval. We also can do time phase budgets within the budget revision maintenance as well. So if I come back here, there's a budget schedule, and so if we set up a new budget, then we can do a budget schedule and enter a time phase on this one as well, which I didn't show you. Then the last step is to approve the budget. And we can access the approval in a couple places. One is I can click on the approve button here. So if we want to list the approvals that we need to, the items we need to approve, and my approver is 1261. And so when I go here, I could change the status from completed to approved. And then at the time it's approved, that's when it will go update the budget maintenance screen. Or there is workflow in the web apps as well, so you can approve the budget in the web apps too. Okay. Also, we have another place where we can edit budgets, and that's in the EAC maintenance. And now we're in a different module. So this is under Project Analyzer module. And if I go to EAC maintenance, it's under Analyzer, and then EAC maintenance is here. We can come in here and we can change the budget directly in this screen. And I'm going to pull up the same project we've been looking at. And this is a nice screen in the fact that we have a lot of information available to us. We can see the revised ETC, our estimate to complete. We can see the current estimate to complete. We can see the actuals that have been posted to our project. We haven't talked about a term called commitments yet, but we have commitments if there's time cards in process. And we have revised EAC as well. So we can come over here and we can type in what our revised estimate to complete is. And if we type in 3,000, then that revises everything else to match what this is kind of the ability to use a what-if scenario. The only challenge with this screen, if you want to be careful, is this is similar to just making an on-the-fly update, and we don't have a historical reason to what occurred. So this doesn't create a revision that you can go back and look at later. But this is a nice place to see your budgets, and if you want to make edits here, you can, and it will update your project budget maintenance screen. So recap of the EAC maintenance screen, we have the same screen called Forecast at Completion, so you can do the same thing with the forecast numbers as well. We can view project actuals and budget amounts. We can revise the estimate at completion or the estimate to complete. And if you change the estimate to complete, it will recalculate what your estimate at completion is. So estimate to completion is simply your actuals compared to your budget, and whatever the difference is, that's how much estimated to complete that project. Budget approval is the ability to then approve the budget, and we can go into budget review and approval directly from the menu, which I showed you, select the approver, and then begin processing, change the status from completed to approved, and then begin processing. Or we have the ability to also approve it through a web app. One of the things that we can do related to budgeting is project controller setup. So we showed you that, and let's recap where we made those changes. So in project controller setup, there's several things that we can do related to budgets. One is we can enter an original budget, a caption for our original budget. We can also enter captions for our EAC and our FAC, so we can make those match what you desire. We can also set up a default approver. So when we're creating our budget revision, who becomes the default approver? Is it the project manager or someone else? And so we can also allow you to override that approver. Even though it defaults as a project manager, we can allow the user to enter and edit a different approver. Another setup item in Project Controller Setup is called Enable Budget History, and that's on the PC Options and Setup tab. And this box can be used in combination with Budget Review and Approval. If this box is checked, we'll get another table populated that can have kind of a summary of how those revisions have created the net budget amount given on each month. So it allows you to track your net budget by month if you're tracking this Enable Budget History. Once this is checked, you cannot uncheck this, and it will continue to track that history, because obviously if you have it checked and then you uncheck it, you would get an inconsistent data result. And also in project maintenance, we showed that we can choose what is the location of how you want these budgets edited and revised. So this is on a per project basis. I can choose if I want to use direct budgeting or budget by revisions. And so the purpose of this is that if we are using budget by revisions, we really don't want employees being able to go in and change the budget directly in the budget maintenance screen. So if we choose budget by revision, that will lock down that screen. So if you come to project budgeting, if we come to project maintenance, and let me come here. And if I come over to this project and I change it to, say, budget by revisions, then if I go to budget maintenance and I try to pull that project up, I can no longer edit in the screen at all. You'll see that everything is grayed out, so I can't type any new information in here or make changes. And that's to lock down and prevent just on-the-fly ad hoc changes. We want to make sure we have revisions that drive this budget, not the direct budgeting. So that's the main purpose of this drop-down choice on each project. We also want to look at inquiry and reporting. So there's quite a few different options in Project Controller related to reporting and inquiry that add some value to your use and your consuming and reviewing your project totals. So Project Analyzer is one of those things that's not very familiar. Most people are not familiar with it, or they don't understand the power that's available to them. And we'll look in Project Analyzer and we can see that we can choose the type of filter that we want for that project. And I'm going to go into the screen again because I think it's much more powerful if you can see it live and understand how it interacts. So I'm going to choose the Project Analyzer, and this is under Inquiries. And let's maximize the screen here. So up here I can choose what projects will show in my filter below, in my grid. So right now I'm seeing all projects that are active for my company. If I want to choose all projects regardless if they're active or inactive, I could choose this. However, I want to review a specific contracts for a certain customer. So if I choose a specific customer, I can see all my ongoing contracts for that customer. I can see who the project manager is. I can see who the business manager is. I can see if they're active or inactive. If I choose active or inactive, if they've been linked to a contract. So this is a contract above the level of the project. I'll see this here as well. So we can see there's several that are associated to a separate contract. And this is valuable to use contracts if you have a lot of construction companies could possibly use contracts where you have a site where that would be the contract, and then if you have different buildings within that site, those could each be their own project if you wanted to. So there's several ways that you can delineate a contract versus a project. We can see the sub-accounts and all the defaults that are really pretty much been set up in project maintenance, the start and end date and those type of things. Now, the nice thing is once I get my list in this screen, then I can also review all the totals for these projects. So every project's in my list. I can hit multi-project view, and when I click on that, I'm going to see every project that was in that list, and I'm going to see a summary of it's not the transactions, it's a summary of the amounts that are posted or updated on that project. And this is by period. So you see I have period 1 here, and I can see all my revenue and expenses by project. And then for each project I have a subtotal where I can see the revenue totaled and the cost totaled and my net profit. So this is like a mini P&L by project for a customer, or you can do this for the entire company too. Now the interesting thing is that I can control the display as well. So maybe I just want to see my overall, I only want to see the subtotals. So if I click on this, now I can see all those projects, and I can see what's my revenue, what's my cost and net profit for every one of these projects. And also the nice thing with this is because it's in a grid, I can click here in the grid anywhere, and I click on the Excel download at the top right, And this is going to dump it into Excel for me. So now I can review and manage these numbers in any way I'd like to. So the same grid that was, or the same information that was in that grid is now available in Excel. The other thing that I can do is now I may not want to just display my subtotals, but maybe I want to display all the costs. So no subtotals displays the same information, but now these are my pure costs and revenue here. Again, I could dump this to Excel and I could see I could do a pivot table on this or whatever makes sense to me as far as how I want to review it. I'm going to go back to the display everything view. The other thing I can do is I can choose, do I just want to show revenue and expense? So now I'm only looking for account categories that have revenue or expense, or maybe I want to do all. And so when I add all, you'll notice that I get my unbilled AR, my billed to date, some of those accounts that we were talking about in the last course where we say that this is an asset and this is an asset. And I can also see liabilities and things like that. So this is where it's a one-stop shop to see all your data. Again, I can focus on just expenses or just revenue. Now, let's go expenses and revenue. Now, we also have some really interesting information available to us here as well. I'm going to actually do the default view. Now, I look at this and I can see all my month-to-date numbers. And I can see my project to date. So regardless of what year it occurred in, this is my project totals, and these are my month numbers here. And I say, well, that revenue number looks kind of funny. I wonder what's included in that. And so we can get a drill down from here as well. So I've come to the right-hand corner, and there's a drill down button, and I click drill down. And this is going to take me to all the transactions that have occurred that make up that $2,000 number over any period of time. That was for the month. Now I'm going to do for the project to date. Let me click on this again. And if I do all, I can see that 35,000 and 20,000 make up those two numbers make up my 55,000. So at any point in time, you can have complete visibility to what your project status is, and then you can also drill back into the details of that status at any point in time as well. You'll also see that I have commitments, and a commitment is essentially time cards that have been put in process but have not been posted. And so I can drill back into those as well. We also will have commitments for subcontracts, and the subcontract module is not going to be covered under this course, but there is a subcontract module, contract management, where subcontracts can be maintained and processed. And if a subcontract is committed, we could see those costs on the project as well. So here I know my project to date costs as have been posted in the system, and then I also have visibility into stuff that I know is going to happen in the future, such as my time cards are going to be finished and my subcontracts are going to be payment requests received. So now I have a revised number of my project to date plus my commitments. That ultimately leads into the ability to understand what's my estimate to complete. So if I know what my current costs are and I know what my budget is, then my estimate to complete is the difference. I also can see my original budget, and then we get a variance column here as well. So there's so much information in here that you can use and see and drill back to. And we have those same columns we had before. So we can even use this screen for a company-wide P&L by project if we wanted, because we could by month on just an ad hoc basis, because I could choose all, and all my projects would show in this list, and then I could drill back into each one of them. I have buttons into these other screens, and we'll go look at those now as well. So this is Analyzer, but if you don't have Analyzer, then we also have the ability to look at projects and from a reporting perspective, and we're going to look at project net profit. So that's in the project module, and project net profit is going to be under inquiries. Get up here where I'm supposed to be. So back to my project here. Again, I can see similar things that I saw in the analyzer, except now I'm looking just at isolated projects. I'm not looking at a group of projects or a group of contracts together. I'm looking at one project at a time. But I can still have the month-to-date number and the project-to-date number, and I have that drill back capability as well. So if I choose this value here, and I can click on the drill down at the top, and that again will bring me to my list of transactions that make up that number. We also have the ability to see our commitments, project to date. So the same information is here without using Analyzer. It's just not as much information. We can also view this information in units rather than amounts. And why would we care about looking at units? If you have a time and materials job, quite frequently the job is based off how many hours you've bid. And so you want to track the hours, not necessarily the amount. And so these units become valuable for T&M type jobs. We can change the period here as well. So that's the project net profit. Now if you think about your projects, you have both the project level and the task level. So what we just looked at is a roll up at the project level. So what's all my revenue for that project? What's all my expenses for that project? But we want to sometimes look at the activity level. So why is this job running over? What are the reasons that my costs are too high? And so we gain value from that by looking at a deeper level, which would be the activities or the tasks on the job as well. So we have a corresponding screen called Task Net Profit. And if I open that screen, it's the same information. The only difference here is that I pull up the project and I pull up a specific task. So now I'm looking just at my documentation task, and I have all those same things available. We also have the ability to export to Excel. So the nice thing with Dynamics is anytime you see a grid, that means you can export to Excel within that grid as well. So this is the project net profit, or task net profit, excuse me. So let's go back to our PowerPoint. We can drill down to Excel. We can filter by period. We can filter by account type. So we mentioned all those items. And then we're in project net profit. We can view it by view profitability by project with drill down here as well. And also we get our budget comparisons, just like we saw in Analyzer. Now the next screen is called Transaction Detail Inquiry, and this is my go-to screen for all my troubleshooting when I'm trying to assess the status of a project or what transactions have been done. So the great thing about this screen is it's viewing all the transactions that have been posted to a project, regardless if it's a profit or a revenue or expense, asset or liability, and it includes really important key information. So this is the kind of the where we see everything that's happened. I'm going to leave this screen. I don't want to make my budget change. And I'm going to go back to Project Analyzer, because actually I'm going to go back to Project Net Profit. We can get to Transaction Detail Inquiry from the menu, but I wanted to pull up one of the jobs that I knew I have transactions to so we can see that data a little bit better. So if I click on this number and I click on drill down, it takes me to the Transaction Detail Inquiry screen. So I have project CO12300, account category labor. I could get to that for period 1. Now if I go to the Transaction Detail Inquiry, it's the same exact screen, but I'm getting there through just the menu rather than through another screen. And I'm going to pull up labor. Now, this is for just this month, but I could choose all, and that would display my transactions for the entire project. I want to look at the detail of what's in the screen, because this is a great place for you to find information when you're looking for what activities occurred on a project. So we always have the period here. We always have the date of the record as well. So if it was an AP voucher, we'd see the transaction date. If it's a time card, we would see the posting dates as well. Here I see I'm looking at labor, so I'm going to have units, and I'm going to have an amount. If it was associated to a different company, I would see it there. If it comes from AP, I'll see what the vendor name is and the vendor ID, as well as any comments that were entered to that as well. Now, if it was flowed through from a billings invoice, we would see the invoice number. If it comes from a purchase order, we'd see the PO number. If it comes from a GL batch or an AP batch, we would see the source batch number. And if it's labor, we see the type of labor it is. And we also can see if it's been billed or not. So the bill status helps us identify it's been billed. We can see the GL account that it was posted to. We can see the sub account that it was posted to. And we have some other key information. If it came from purchasing or inventory, if it was associated to an inventory ID, I would have all those key fields like the inventory ID, the site that it came from, the warehouse that it came from. And then also we have the task clear over to the right. And so again, because this is a grid, I can copy and or I can download it to Excel. So you can see how we don't have to filter on a specific account category. If I want to see every transaction on this project since the beginning of the project, or for this month, I remove all the detail so I don't look by task or account category, and I choose month to date. Now I see every data item that was posted to this project in this period. And I can see the source where it came from, and I can see if it's been billed or not. And I also can see if it's been allocated, which will make sense when we talk about allocator in the next set of modules. So this is a great place to find data for your jobs. Highly recommend this screen to use it and spend time in it and review and look at your data, because it's very, very important. Now, another record we can look at is called a job summary report. So the screen we just look at is more ad hoc, so I want to just do reporting from day to day. I want to see the transactions, but maybe I want a more formal report. And we have a job summary report that we can run. And that job summary report has all the same information, but I can run it by project. So if I come down here, if I choose job summary report, and it's under the government contractor reports, but you don't have to be a government contractor to use this report. It just has some more functionality that government contractors can benefit from. I'm loading a template so I can run it by one project. So this report has a lot of great information as well, similar to what we've seen, but without the drill down. So I can see the client and the contract and the project and the dates of the project as well. And I can see all my prior years. So this gives me the numbers for my costs for the previous years. Then I can see the 3-month trending for the current period and the prior 2 months. And then I can see my year-to-date number. So this is this year's number. And then I can see my budgets as well. So my revised budget, which we were talking about, and my actual budget, and then my estimate to complete. And then I also see my committed costs. So this is a nice report that allows us to see all this information, and we can control what we see and where we see it. So where these costs show and things like that, we have some control over and can modify for your company. The project profile report is a report that allows us to see what we have on projects. So the screenshot is probably a little difficult to read. Let me also show that report in here. So we have a project profile report. And this report allows us to just see each of our projects that have been set up and the status of them and the information that was set up on the project. So I have quite a few projects in this database, so it'll take a minute to run. So you can see all the projects on the left-hand side. You can get it to drag here. This is my project list. And then for each project, I can see again, the start and end date if it were entered. We can associate a PO number to a project. That's in project maintenance. We can also choose, or we can see all the tasks that are listed on that project, and we can see the budgets and the amounts that have been transacted against it. So this is kind of a snapshot of each one of your projects. We also have quick queries that we can use. And the quick queries are going to have similar data to what we saw on the screens, but just another way to pull data out. Specifically, the transaction detail quick query. So if I come to quick queries and I go to project, you'll see that project specifically has, I can get a list of my tasks. I can get a list of my project transactions, which is what we're going to look at. I can see my account categories, so all the account categories that have been set up would show here. Let's look at the project transactions list. So it's very similar to that transaction detail inquiry screen that I just showed you, except now it's in more of a form where you can filter it, because in this screen we can add filters. So we can look for a specific project, or if we want to go across projects, this would be a great option. So if I want to look where all the projects where the task contains let's say. So now I can look at all the projects that have task that starts with DO and the list of them. Now if I want to search on a specific task, I could go DO 00102. So I could narrow this down. And it would then list only those tasks. So I have some options. So then I can track, if you have tasks that go across multiple projects and you want to track those tasks, then you can use that screen to find them. The other one that I think is kind of nice is the financial transaction summary by project. So this is similar to what we saw in Analyzer, but again, we can filter a little differently in here, but we can still see the project to date amount, the commitments, the original budget, the estimated completion, all those things, forecast at completion, and so forth. So these are all very valuable queries that we can use and help you to see the kind of information in different ways. Let's review some of the things we learned within the project budgeting and Analyzer modules. We learned how to set up a project budget. We learned how to schedule a project budget with time-phased budgets. We also talked about budget revisions and how they feed to project budgets. And we also reviewed how we could see and review transactions on our project and see and review the profit and loss on our project. This concludes Module 2, Project Budgeting and Analyzer. In the next module, we'll review Time and Expense module.